It was a late October evening, and the world seemed to settle into its usual rhythms. People were preparing for bed, scrolling through their phones, watching the news, or finishing dinner. Across the globe, the sky was clear, with a brilliant full moon illuminating the cities and countryside alike. But then, as if by some unseen force, every screen flickered for a moment. In a small apartment in New York City, Dr. Emma Gray sat hunched over her computer, reviewing data from her latest research project on exoplanet atmospheres. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, expecting an email or a news alert, but her phone displayed an unfamiliar message. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the text, stark and unmissable. "We seek sanctuary. We come in peace. Help us, and we will help you." What in the world? Emma muttered, frowning. She assumed it was some kind of elaborate prank, perhaps a viral marketing campaign for a new movie. But before she could think further, her laptop screen flashed with the same message. She opened the window and heard car alarms going off, dogs barking, something was happening outside. Her neighbor from the building across the street had leaned out their window, looking just as confused as she felt. Emma grabbed her jacket and rushed outside. The air was cool, but thick with anticipation. Neighbors were spilling out onto the street, staring upward at the night sky. And there, hovering just above the horizon, a second moon seemed to have appeared, round and impossibly large. "What the hell is that?" someone shouted. A collective murmur spread through the crowd. Phones flashed as people tried to take pictures, but even through the camera lenses, the image seemed distorted, like something their technology wasn't ready to comprehend. "It's not a moon," Emma whispered under her breath, her trained eye already noticing the differences. The object was too large, too smooth, and it shimmered faintly with a metallic gleam. It was a ship. A colossal spacecraft, the likes of which she had only imagined in science fiction. Suddenly, the same message appeared again, but this time in the sky, projected like a hologram, written in every major language known to humanity. "We seek sanctuary. We come in peace." Emma's heart raced. This wasn't some prank. This was real. Around the world, chaos ensued. Governments scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Military forces were put on high alert, while scientific communities were being assembled to offer guidance. Within hours, Emma received a phone call she had never expected. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "Dr. Gray? This is General Donovan with the United Nations Space Defense Initiative. We need you to report to Washington immediately. You're being briefed on the first contact team." Emma's mind reeled. She had spent her entire career studying space, the stars, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. But now, that possibility had become reality. Within minutes, a black SUV was at her door, whisking her away to the airport. As she boarded the military plane, Emma glanced at her phone, her inbox flooded with unread messages from friends and colleagues. They all wanted to know what was happening. But she had no answers yet. All she knew was that an alien race was asking for refuge, and humanity was about to make the most important decision in its history. Hours later, at the UN Command Center in Washington, D.C., Emma stood alongside an elite group of scientists, diplomats, and military officials, all staring at the massive screen that displayed a live feed of the alien vessel in orbit. It stretched for miles, its surface shimmering like polished steel, faint patterns glowing in rhythmic waves. "How long have they been up there?" Emma asked, her voice a little shakier than she'd intended. "Approximately 8 hours now," General Donovan replied. His face was grim, but there was a spark of excitement in his eyes. "They haven't made any threatening moves. Just the message over and over again." "And we still don't know what they want?" asked Dr. Marcusley, a physicist who had worked with Emma on a few projects before. "They've made it clear, they want sanctuary," Donovan said, flipping through a report. "According to some quick linguistic analysis of their message, their language is telepathic in nature. They're broadcasting the translation into every human language we know." A young woman, an interpreter named Sarah Malik, chimed in. We think their original message isn't just about language. It carries an emotional undertone. We're picking up fear, but also hope. Fear? Emma repeated, frowning. Why would they be afraid? They have the technology to cross the stars and park a ship the size of a continent over our planet. That's the part that concerns us, Donovan admitted. We've never faced anything like this before. We don't know what's coming next. Just as the room settled into a tense silence, the screen flickered once more. This time, something changed. The holographic message dissolved, and in its place, an image appeared. It was a close-up of a figure, tall, humanoid but with features too sharp and angular to be human. Their skin was a deep shade of blue, shimmering like liquid metal. Their eyes, large and luminous, seemed to pierce through the screen and into the minds of everyone watching. We are the Valurian people, the figure's voice echoed in the room, though their lips did not move. Our world is gone, destroyed by forces we could not escape. We have traveled across the stars, seeking a new home. Your world is our final hope. Please, let us join you. Let us live among you. In return, we will share our knowledge, our technology, our understanding of the universe. We come in peace. The voice faded, and the room erupted into whispers. Emma's mind spun. The Valurians weren't invaders, they were refugees. Their planet had been destroyed, and now they were here, seeking sanctuary on Earth. General Donovan cleared his throat, silencing the murmurs. We need to make a decision, and fast. This is unlike anything we've ever faced. If we offer them refuge, we could be inviting advanced technology and knowledge beyond our wildest dreams. But if we deny them, or worse, if we misinterpret their plea, Dr. Lee added, his voice low, we could start a conflict we can't possibly win. Emma stepped forward, her mind racing with possibilities. We have to approach this with caution, yes, but we also have to realize the opportunity this represents. If what they're saying is true, then turning them away could be catastrophic. Not just for them, but for us. General Donovan nodded, his face thoughtful. You're not wrong, Dr. Gray. But we need to be sure. We'll be making contact with them soon, and you'll be part of that team. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. The weight of what was happening was sinking in. The entire future of Earth, and potentially the galaxy, now rested on how humanity chose to respond. All right, she said, determination flooding her voice. Let's make sure we do this right. Outside the window, the alien vessel loomed, silent and waiting. The desert air was crisp and still, a vast, open landscape that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The chosen landing site, deep in the Australian outback, was isolated, far from cities and prying eyes. It was early morning, and the sun had not yet risen. All around the landing zone, military personnel stood on alert, flanking the temporary UN facility set up for the occasion. Dr. Emma Gray was among a small group of scientists, diplomats, and linguists gathered near the center of the area, their faces bathed in the eerie glow of floodlights. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and anxiety. Everyone present understood that they were standing at the threshold of something extraordinary, something that could change humanity forever. How are you feeling? Dr. Marcus Lee asked, walking up to Emma. His face looked calm, but his hands fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve. Like I'm about to meet something out of a dream, or a nightmare, Emma replied, her eyes locked on the sky where the massive Valurian vessel hovered. I still can't believe this is happening. First contact, Marcus. With an alien race. Yeah, Marcus sighed, following her gaze. The world will never be the same after today. An armored military vehicle pulled up nearby, and General Donovan stepped out, his expression steely. He adjusted his cap, scanning the group of experts before addressing them. All right, people, Donovan said, his voice cutting through the tension. Our guests are landing in 10 minutes. You all know your roles. Keep it professional, follow protocol, and remember, this is humanity's first impression. We cannot afford mistakes. Emma and Marcus exchanged a glance, the weight of the moment sinking deeper. Dr. Gray, Donovan said, motioning her over. "You're the lead scientist on this. I want you front and center when the Valyrians arrive. The world's going to be watching." Emma nodded, her pulse quickening. "Understood." A sudden hum filled the air, causing everyone to stop in their tracks. The ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate as the noise grew louder, more rhythmic, like the thrum of a colossal engine descending from the heavens. All eyes turned to the sky. The Valyrian ship, a shimmering metallic behemoth that hung in the sky like a second sun, began to shift. Slowly, a smaller craft detached from its belly, descending gracefully through the atmosphere. It looked like a silver teardrop, gliding without sound toward the prepared landing zone. Emma's heart raced. She could barely breathe. "Here we go," Marcus whispered, a mix of awe and fear in his voice. The craft landed gently, not even kicking up dust. The surface was so smooth and reflective it seemed otherworldly, a living thing more than a machine. For a long moment, there was silence as the world waited. Then, a seam appeared in the craft's side, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. A figure stepped out. The Valyrian emissary was tall, nearly 7 feet by human standards, slender, and graceful. Its skin, a deep, iridescent blue, seemed to shimmer in the floodlights, reflecting hues of purple and silver. Its large, almond-shaped eyes glowed faintly with a soft, inner light. It wore no visible clothing, but its skin appeared textured, almost as if it was draped in a biological armor of sorts. The creature paused at the foot of the ramp, looking at the gathering before it. Then, with slow, deliberate steps, it moved forward, accompanied by 2 other Valyrians, who looked similarly ethereal. The human delegation stood frozen, unsure of how to proceed. Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing. She reminded herself that these beings had traveled across the stars, seeking sanctuary, not war. They were here in peace. She stepped forward, the first human to approach them. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice carefully controlled but laced with nervous excitement. "I'm Dr. Emma Gray, one of the scientists appointed to lead our communication efforts. We come to greet you in peace." The Valyrian emissary's large eyes met hers. There was a flicker of light in them, as if it was processing her words. Then, without moving its mouth, a voice resonated in Emma's mind. "We are grateful, Dr. Gray. I am Thalrian, the leader of my people. We come to your world not as conquerors, but as refugees. We seek your protection and, in return, offer our knowledge and wisdom." Emma was stunned. The voice was clear, articulate, and it carried not just words but emotions, an overwhelming sense of weariness, longing, and hope. It took her a moment to respond. "Your message reached us," Emma said, regaining her composure. "Our governments are considering your request. But we need to understand more. Why have you come to Earth? What happened to your world?" Thalrian's expression remained calm, though his glowing eyes dimmed slightly. The other 2 Valyrians stood silently behind him, their faces unreadable. "Our star died," Thalrian explained, his telepathic voice carrying a weight of sorrow. "It went supernova, consuming our planet and all the worlds in our system. We were a thriving civilization once, but we had no warning, no time to save ourselves. Those of us who survived escaped aboard our Ark, the vessel you see above. For centuries, we have wandered the stars, searching for a new home. We have found none, until now." A murmur swept through the human delegation. Emma felt a pang of empathy for the Valyrian leader. Homeless, adrift in the vastness of space for centuries, she couldn't imagine the loss they had endured. Marcus stepped forward, his voice tentative but respectful. "And why Earth? Of all the planets you could have chosen, why this one?" Thalrian turned his gaze toward Marcus, the flicker of light in his eyes intensifying slightly. "Your world is alive. It sustains a complex web of life, one of the few planets capable of doing so in this galaxy. And your people, you are at a critical juncture in your development. You stand on the edge of greatness, or ruin. We wish to help you take the path to greatness." "Help us how?" General Donovan asked, stepping into the conversation with his characteristic authority. What exactly are you offering in exchange for sanctuary? Valerian regarded Donovan for a moment before replying, our knowledge. Our technology. We have seen much, learned much. We can help you overcome the challenges your world faces, disease, environmental destruction, conflict. In exchange, we ask for the chance to live among you, to rebuild our civilization in peace. The room fell silent. This was the offer of a lifetime, technology that could heal the planet, save lives, and unlock mysteries humans had barely begun to understand. But the risks were undeniable. Allowing an advanced alien race to live among them, without fully knowing their intentions or capabilities, was a dangerous gamble. Emma looked at Valerian, her thoughts racing. What assurances can you give us that you come in peace? We need to know that you're not here to take control or use us in some way. For the first time, Valerian's expression softened. We have no desire for conquest, Dr. Gray. We have lost everything. All we seek is a place to live, a chance to survive. If we wanted to conquer, we would not have asked for your help. We would have taken what we needed. Emma felt the truth of his words resonating in her mind, as if the emotions behind them were being shared as well. She believed him, at least for now. General Donovan exchanged a glance with Emma before stepping forward again. We'll need time to discuss this with our leaders, he said carefully. But know this, any threat to our world will be met with force. We won't hesitate to defend ourselves. Valerian inclined his head, seemingly unoffended. We understand. We ask only for your trust, and we will earn it in time. The conversation ended, and as the Valurians turned to leave, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. First contact had been made, and the future, whether bright or dark, now depended on what happened next. As she watched the alien craft ascend back toward the massive arc in the sky, Emma whispered to herself, we've just taken the first step into the unknown. It had only been a week since the Valurians landed in the Australian desert, but the world was already feeling the strain of their presence. Humanity was divided, some saw an opportunity for incredible advancement, while others saw a looming threat. Tensions mounted as governments, media, and ordinary people debated what should be done. The Valurians remained in their enormous arc in orbit, awaiting Earth's answer. Inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, Dr. Emma Gray sat quietly in the back of a massive conference hall. The air was thick with tension as world leaders and their representatives debated. Some called for immediate cooperation with the Valurians, others warned of the dangers of trusting an alien race that could be hiding its true intentions. At the front of the room, a European delegate's voice rose above the others. We cannot afford to turn them away. They have technology that could solve our energy crisis, cure diseases we haven't even begun to understand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for humanity. Across the table, a U.S. senator shook his head vigorously. And what about the risks? How do we know they're telling the truth? We barely know anything about them. For all we know, they're just waiting for us to let our guard down so they can take control. The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement and dissent. Emma felt the weight of the arguments pressing down on her. She had spent hours reviewing the Valurian data and speaking with Valerian and the other emissaries. Everything in her gut told her that they were sincere, that they truly sought refuge and had no desire to conquer Earth. But she also understood the fear. General Donovan leaned over to her from his seat. You've had the most contact with them, Dr. Gray. What do you think? His voice was low, but his eyes were sharp, watching her carefully. Emma hesitated. I think they're being honest. At least, as far as I can tell. Their planet was destroyed, and they've been wandering for centuries. Valerian's emotional resonance is clear, they're desperate, but they're not hostile. They've even offered to share their technology in exchange for sanctuary. Donovan raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of trust to place in aliens we've only just met. I know, Emma admitted, but they haven't given us any reason to doubt them yet. If they wanted to invade, they wouldn't be asking for permission. They have the power to take what they want, and yet they haven't. Before Donovan could respond, a loud bang echoed through the chamber as the Chinese ambassador slammed his hand on the table. "Enough of this back and forth," he shouted. "We must come to a decision. Either we allow the Valyrians to settle among us, or we send them away. If we wait too long, they might see our indecision as a weakness." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the gravity of the situation. Sending the Valyrians away could mean denying Earth access to incredible technology, not to mention risking a potential conflict if they interpreted rejection as hostility. But letting them stay could invite unknown dangers. Emma's thoughts were interrupted when Marcus Lee entered the room, his face pale. He hurried over to her, leaning down to whisper in her ear. "Emma, we've got a problem." She blinked. "What kind of problem?" "A splinter group of Valyrians, one of the more militant factions, just tried to hack into Earth's satellite defense systems. We managed to stop it, but we're still trying to figure out if it was an isolated incident or part of something bigger." Emma's heart sank. "What? Why wasn't I informed sooner?" "General Donovan just found out. He didn't want to spread panic until we knew more. We need to talk to Thalrian. Now." Emma glanced at Donovan, who gave her a curt nod, indicating that he was already in the loop. He stood up and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received intelligence of a potential internal threat among the Valyrian refugees. Some of their people may not be as peaceful as we were led to believe." The reaction was immediate. Panic spread through the room as voices raised in confusion and fear. "See? I told you they couldn't be trusted," a British delegate shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "We need to sever contact immediately," another demanded. Emma felt the wave of distrust crashing down like a storm. She rose from her seat, her voice steady but urgent. "Please, everyone, calm down. We don't know the full story yet. We need to speak with Thalrian. If there's a faction acting independently, it may not reflect the Valyrian leadership's intentions." Donovan took control of the situation, motioning for Emma and Marcus to follow him out of the room. As they hurried down the hall to the secure communications center, Emma's mind raced. A splinter faction could mean many things: Valyrians divided in their approach to Earth, internal conflicts among their people, or perhaps something worse. They arrived at the communications hub where a holographic projection of Thalrian waited, his serene expression giving no hint of alarm. "Dr. Gray." "General Donovan. You have urgent news?" Thalrian's telepathic voice was calm, but there was a note of concern beneath it. Donovan didn't waste time. "We've detected an attempt by some of your people to hack into our satellite defense network. Can you explain that?" Thalrian's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, Emma sensed a ripple of anxiety in his projected emotions. "This is troubling news. I was unaware of such actions. But I fear I may know the cause." "Go on," Donovan said, his tone firm. Thalrian's gaze flickered toward Emma, and she felt a wave of sorrow and regret wash over her. "There is a faction among my people," Thalrian admitted, led by a warlord named Koresh. "He believes that asking for sanctuary is a sign of weakness. Koresh and his followers were soldiers, bred for war during the long exodus from our homeworld. They do not trust that you will help us and believe that Earth is a resource to be taken, not shared." Emma's stomach twisted. "How many followers does Koresh have?" "A few thousand. They are the minority, but they are dangerous. They believe that we should seize what we need by force, and I fear they will act without my permission." Donovan clenched his jaw. "You didn't think to mention this earlier?" "I hope to resolve the situation internally before it became a threat to your world," Thalrian responded, his voice heavy with guilt. "But it seems Koresh has grown impatient." Emma stepped forward, her voice urgent but controlled. "Thalrian, if this faction is as dangerous as you say, we need to stop them before they provoke an incident. We've worked hard to build trust, but if they launch an attack on Earth, everything could fall apart." Thalrian nodded, his glowing eyes dimming. "You are right. I will confront Koresh and his followers. But I will need your help. Together, we must show them that cooperation is the only way forward." I fear that if we are divided, it could lead to conflict that neither of us can afford. Donovan crossed his arms. You're asking us to intervene in an internal Valyrian matter. That's a big risk. It is a risk we must take, Valerian replied. If Koresh acts on his plans, it will lead to open conflict. His forces are small, but they are well equipped. If we unite, we can stop them before they escalate the situation. Emma glanced at Donovan. She could see the wheels turning in his mind, weighing the options. Finally, he gave a slow nod. All right, Donovan said. We'll work with you on this. But if this goes south, Valerian, it's your people who will pay the price. Valerian bowed his head in acknowledgement. I understand. And I thank you for your trust. As the connection ended, Emma let out a long breath. She looked at Marcus, who gave her a small, grim smile. So much for a peaceful first contact, Marcus muttered. Emma shook her head, her thoughts swirling. This isn't over yet. If we can stop Koresh, we might still have a chance to make this work. Let's hope so, Donovan said, his voice rough. Because if we fail, we might be looking at the first war between humans and aliens. Emma stared out the window at the sky, where the Valyrian arc loomed above the earth. Somewhere up there, factions were already plotting, and humanity's future hung in the balance. The dream of cooperation was still alive, but now it was teetering on the edge of collapse. The atmosphere inside the command center was thick with tension. A plan had been laid out. Valerian would confront Koresh and his militant faction with Earth's help. Yet, despite the apparent cooperation between the Valyrian leadership and Earth's governments, a deep unease had settled over everyone involved. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore, this was a matter of survival. Dr. Emma Gray stood next to General Donovan, staring at the giant screen that displayed a tactical map of Earth's orbit. Small markers indicated the Valyrian Ark, Earth's defense satellites, and various Valyrian ships patrolling near their mothership. Somewhere within that fleet was Koresh, the warlord who could undo everything. His followers had already made moves against Earth's systems, and the possibility of a full-scale assault was growing more real by the second. Do you really trust him? Marcus Lee asked from beside her, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Valerian? Emma glanced at Marcus and then back at the screen. I do. He's been honest so far, and I think he genuinely believes in peaceful cooperation. But Koresh, if we don't stop him, we're going to be at war with a faction that has technology far beyond ours. General Donovan cut in, his voice hard. We're preparing for both scenarios. If Valerian can get his people under control, we'll be ready to negotiate again. If not, well, let's hope we don't need to test our new defenses just yet. Speaking of which, Marcus said, turning toward the general, how confident are you in the systems the Valyrians share with us? Donovan's face tightened. Confident enough. Their technology has already bolstered our defenses, but we're still learning how to fully integrate it. We need more time. Emma frowned. Time was the one thing they didn't have. A sudden beeping interrupted her thoughts. One of the tactical officers seated at the control desk turned around, his face pale. Sir, we're detecting unusual activity from one of the Valyrian ships. It's powering up weapons systems. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Is it Koresh? The officer nodded. It's the Merrick, one of Koresh's primary ships. They've begun to move toward our defense satellites. Donovan cursed under his breath. They're making their move. All units, go to high alert. Prepare for engagement. The room erupted into controlled chaos as soldiers, technicians, and diplomats rushed to their positions. Emma watched the screen as Koresh's ship continued its path, approaching one of Earth's key satellites. If they took out the satellite network, Earth would be vulnerable. We need to talk to Valerian now, Emma urged, her voice tight. We can't let this escalate. If we fire first, it could set off a full-blown war. Donovan nodded, already motioning to one of the officers. Get Valerian on the line. Now. Moments later, the familiar holographic projection of Thalrian appeared, his expression calm but his glowing eyes betraying a hint of tension. "You have urgent news," Thalrian said, his telepathic voice resonating in the room. "Koresh is moving against our satellites," Donovan said sharply. "He's powering up his weapons. If he attacks, we will respond with force. You need to stop him." Thalrian's expression darkened. "This is worse than I feared. Koresh is impatient. He believes that if he cripples your defenses, we will be forced to negotiate from a position of strength. He underestimates your resolve. Can you stop him?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Thalrian closed his eyes for a moment, as if focusing on something unseen. Then, with a sigh, he opened them again. "I will try, but Koresh does not answer to me. His loyalty is only to his cause." "That's not good enough," Donovan said, his tone icy. "If you can't control him, we will." Before Thalrian could respond, the tactical officer called out again. "Koresh's ship has locked onto our satellite. He's preparing to fire." Emma's pulse raced. "Thalrian, you need to act now." Thalrian's projection flickered as he sent out a mental command to his fleet. "I will deploy my forces to intercept Koresh's ship. We will not allow him to fire the first shot." Seconds later, the screen showed several Valyrian ships breaking off from the Ark, moving swiftly to cut off Koresh's vessel. But it was clear that a battle was imminent. The Merrick was heavily armed, and Koresh's forces, though fewer in number, were formidable. "Do we engage if they open fire?" one of Donovan's officers asked. Donovan hesitated for a brief moment before nodding. "Yes. If Koresh attacks, we respond with everything we have. This is a direct threat." Emma's stomach churned. They were on the edge of something catastrophic, and all she could do was watch as events unfolded. On the screen, the Valyrian ships loyal to Thalrian closed in on Koresh's vessel. Communications from Thalrian's fleet filled the air, broadcast through the tactical systems. Emma listened as they attempted to reason with Koresh's forces. "Koresh, stand down. This is not the way." Koresh's response was a sharp, angry voice, dripping with disdain. "You are weak, Thalrian. You would beg these humans for scraps when we could take what we need. They will never accept us as equals, they will turn on us the moment we show vulnerability." "Here we go," Marcus muttered under his breath, watching the screen intently. Suddenly, a burst of energy lit up the map. Koresh's ship had fired. "He's attacking one of the defense satellites," the officer shouted. "Engage!" Donovan barked. "Take him down." The command center shook with activity as Earth's defense systems came online. In orbit, energy blasts and missiles launched toward Koresh's vessel. At the same time, Thalrian's loyalists engaged in a fierce battle with Koresh's forces, their ships darting through space, exchanging bursts of plasma fire. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she watched. The first missile struck Koresh's ship, causing a massive explosion along its hull, but the vessel remained intact, continuing its assault. Thalrian ships moved in, surrounding the Merrick, trying to disable it without causing further destruction. "Come on," Emma whispered, her hands clenched into fists. "End this before it gets worse." Thalrian's voice echoed through the room again, his calm demeanor now tinged with urgency. "Koresh, stop this. You are dooming us all." But Koresh's only response was another barrage of fire, this time aimed directly at Thalrian's ships. The battle raged on, the sky above Earth a chaotic storm of energy blasts and explosions. It was clear that Koresh was not going to back down. His forces fought with the desperation of those who believed they were fighting for their very survival, unwilling to submit to what they saw as weakness. Just as it seemed that Koresh's forces might break through, a bright light filled the screen. One of Thalrian's ships had managed to disable Koresh's vessel, sending it spinning into the void. The firing stopped. "They've done it," Marcus said, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. Thalrian's forces disabled the ship. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Everyone watched the screen, waiting to see if Koresh's forces would surrender. The Merrick drifted in space, crippled but not destroyed. Then, Valerian's voice filled the room, heavy with exhaustion. It is done. Koresh's ship is neutralized. His forces are retreating. Emma let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They had avoided the worst, for now. Donovan stepped forward, his expression hard. Valerian, you've got a real problem on your hands. This can't happen again. Valerian's projection looked weary. I know. Koresh will face justice for his actions. I will ensure that no other factions rise against our cooperation. But I fear the damage may already be done. Emma stepped closer to the hologram. There's still a chance to fix this, Valerian. We can still make peace. Valerian's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. I hope you are right, Dr. Gray. But Koresh's actions have sown doubt, both among my people and yours. It will be difficult to rebuild the trust we have lost today. The connection ended, and the room was left in silence. Marcus turned to Emma, his face pale but determined. We need to get to work on rebuilding that trust. Otherwise, this won't be the last battle. Emma nodded, her mind spinning with the enormity of what had just happened. They had stopped Koresh for now, but the fractures in the Valurian leadership and in humanity's trust were deepening. As the command center began to wind down, Emma looked out the window at the sky. The Valurian Ark still hovered in orbit, its future with Earth uncertain. The battle had ended, but the war for peace had just begun. The aftermath of Koresh's attack sent shockwaves across the globe. News networks buzzed with footage of the space battle, showing Earth's defense systems lighting up the night sky, and the damage to the satellite network. The message was clear: humanity's first interaction with an alien species had almost turned catastrophic. Dr. Emma Gray sat in a quiet corner of the United Nations Command Center, staring at the aftermath on the giant screen in front of her. Reports were still flooding in. Koresh's forces had retreated, but not without leaving scars on both the Valurian refugees and Earth. The question now was how to move forward when trust had been shattered so deeply. She glanced up as Marcus Lee entered the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her and sat down beside her, his face weary. Still no word from Valerian? He asked. Emma shook her head, wrapping her hands around the cup. No, not yet. He's probably dealing with the fallout among his own people. Koresh's rebellion has made things a lot worse than I think any of us anticipated. Marcus sighed. I was afraid of that. There's already talk among the international community about withdrawing from negotiations altogether. Some are pushing to sever ties with the Valurians and demand that they leave Earth's orbit. Emma looked at him sharply. They can't seriously be considering that. They are, Marcus said grimly. The attack was the last straw for a lot of people. Trust is eroding fast. Emma stood, pacing. We can't afford to turn them away. Valerian is trying to help us, and despite Koresh, most of the Valurians are peaceful. If we cut them off now, we're risking a much larger conflict. Koresh's forces could regroup, or worse, more factions might rise up. Marcus watched her, his face thoughtful. I know, but a lot of the world leaders are thinking more about the immediate threat than the long-term consequences. They want to feel safe, and right now, the Valurians don't make them feel that way. Before Emma could respond, General Donovan walked in, his usual composed expression hard with frustration. He approached the 2 of them, his jaw clenched. We've got a situation, Donovan said without preamble. Several countries are pushing to take a more aggressive stance against the Valurians. The satellite attacks were a wake-up call for them, and they want to send a message that Earth won't tolerate any more threats. Emma's heart sank. And what does that mean? Donovan looked grim. Some are calling for us to demand that the Valurians hand over Koresh and his followers, or face expulsion from Earth's orbit. If they refuse, well, there's talk of using force. Emma's stomach twisted. That would be a disaster. We can't afford to start a war with the Valurians. We're talking about a species with technology that's centuries ahead of ours. If we push them, they'll have no choice but to defend themselves. Donovan nodded. I know that, and so does Thalrian, but the political pressure is mounting. If we don't get ahead of this, things could spiral out of control. Emma rubbed her temples, trying to think. We need to calm things down, rebuild trust. But how? Koresh has already done so much damage. Before anyone could answer, a soft beeping came from the communications panel. One of the technicians turned around, looking startled. Dr. Gray, General Donovan, were receiving a transmission from Thalrian. He's requesting an immediate audience. Donovan exchanged a glance with Emma and Marcus. Patch it through. The room dimmed as the holographic projection of Thalrian appeared once again. This time, there was no mistaking the weariness etched into his features. His glowing eyes flickered faintly, as though even keeping his projection steady took effort. I am sorry to contact you so soon after the battle, Thalrian said, his voice soft yet resonating with emotion. But we need to discuss what comes next, before it is too late. Donovan stepped forward. What's the situation on your end, Thalrian? Koresh's forces are in retreat, but we're hearing that there's still unrest among your people. Thalrian's eyes darkened. The situation is fragile. Koresh's rebellion has emboldened some of the more radical elements among my people. They believe Earth's response was too swift, too strong. They see it as proof that humans will never accept us. Emma felt her pulse quicken. And what do you think, Thalrian? Do you still believe in cooperation? Thalrian's gaze softened as he looked at her. I have always believed that cooperation is our only hope. My people cannot survive another war, not after all we have lost. But I fear that time is running out. Koresh's rebellion has forced us into a corner, and the more radical elements may attempt to seize power if we do not find a way forward. Donovan crossed his arms. We need Koresh and his followers to face justice. If we're going to rebuild trust, your people need to show that you're serious about peace. Thalrian inclined his head. I agree. Koresh must be brought to justice. But there is more at stake here than just Koresh. My people are scared, lost. Many of them believe that they are running out of options. If we do not offer them hope, real hope, they may turn to more extreme measures. Emma leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. What can we do, Thalrian? How do we stop this from escalating further? Thalrian's eyes flickered. We must show unity, both among my people and yours. There needs to be a demonstration of trust, a gesture that proves to both sides that peace is possible. I propose a joint mission, Valyrian and human forces working together to bring Koresh and his followers to justice. Donovan raised an eyebrow. You want us to go after Koresh together? Yes, Thalrian replied. If humans and Valyrians work side by side to end this rebellion, it will send a powerful message. It will prove that we can trust each other. And it will show those who doubt that cooperation is not only possible but necessary. Emma's mind raced. It was a bold plan, but it made sense. Right now, both sides were teetering on the edge of open conflict. A joint mission could help rebuild trust, but it could also be incredibly dangerous. What kind of mission are we talking about? Marcus asked, his voice skeptical. Koresh's forces are well armed, and they've already shown they're willing to use force. Are you asking us to risk human lives to stop a Valyrian civil war? Thalrian met his gaze calmly. I understand the risks. But if we do nothing, the conflict will spread, and it will become impossible to contain. You are not just stopping a rebellion, you are preventing a war that could engulf both our peoples. Donovan looked thoughtful. A joint mission would be a powerful symbol. But we'd need to handle it carefully. There's no room for mistakes. Emma stepped forward, her voice quiet but resolute. I think we should do it. Thalrian's right, we need to show that we can work together. It's risky, but doing nothing is riskier. If we don't act, this will spiral out of control. Donovan studied her for a moment before nodding. All right. We'll take this to the council, but I'm on board. We'll work out the logistics and move forward. Thalrian's expression lightened, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. Thank you. I will prepare my forces for the mission. Together, we can stop Koresh before it is too late. The transmission ended, and the room fell into a heavy silence. Emma exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of what they had just agreed to. The future of Earth and the Valyrians now rested on this mission, a joint effort to end the rebellion and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Think this will work? Marcus asked, his voice quiet. Emma stared at the screen, where the Valyrian Ark still hovered in orbit. It has to. If we can't stop Koresh, we're looking at a war that no one can win. As they prepared for the mission, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope over the abyss. One wrong step, and everything could fall apart. But it was a risk they had to take. The only way forward was together, or not at all. The atmosphere inside the military transport was heavy with tension. Emma Gray sat strapped into her seat, surrounded by both human soldiers and Valyrian warriors. The hum of the ship's engines was steady, but inside, Emma's thoughts churned like a storm. She glanced to her left, where Marcus Lee sat, eyes closed, as if in meditation. Across from them, General Donovan was checking over a map of their target, his face grim. But it was the sight of Thalrian, seated a few feet away, that gave her both hope and anxiety. His calm, ethereal presence belied the chaos they were flying into. Thalrian had risked everything to push for this joint mission, to capture Koresh and put an end to the rebellion. It was the only way to avoid a larger conflict that could consume both Earth and the Valyrian refugees. And yet, they were flying into what could easily become a battle neither side would walk away from. Emma leaned forward, catching Thalrian's gaze. Are you sure your people are ready for this? We can't afford any hesitation. Thalrian's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light of the transport, softened with something akin to sadness. My people are ready. They understand the stakes. Those who still believe in peace will fight to preserve it. We must stop Koresh before he destroys everything. Emma nodded, gripping the straps of her seat a little tighter. They were heading for a small asteroid base that Koresh and his forces had seized weeks ago. It was far enough from the Valyrian Ark to be difficult to detect, but Thalrian's intelligence had pinpointed its location. This was their best, and likely last, chance to stop Koresh before he rallied more supporters and launched another attack on Earth's defenses. Approaching target, the pilot's voice came through the comms. ETA, 10 minutes. General Donovan looked up from the tactical map and addressed the combined force. This is it, people. We've got one shot at this. Our mission is clear. We get in, neutralize Koresh, and disable his forces. Minimal casualties. The last thing we want is an all-out war. One of the Valyrian warriors, a female named Inara, stepped forward. Her tall, graceful frame radiated strength, and her voice carried an echo of telepathic resonance. We will fight with you, General. But know this, Koresh's forces are fanatical. They believe Earth is a threat that must be eliminated. They will not surrender easily. Donovan gave her a firm nod. Understood. But if we can get Koresh alive, we will. Thalrian's people need to see him face justice, not martyrdom. The transport ship shuddered slightly as it entered the asteroid's atmosphere. Emma felt a surge of adrenaline as she checked her gear. She wasn't a soldier, but as one of the key figures in the diplomatic talks, she had insisted on being part of the mission. This was too important to stay on the sidelines. As the ship touched down on a barren stretch near the base, the ramp lowered, and the combined human and Valyrian force quickly disembarked. The air was cold and thin, the asteroid's surface a desolate landscape of jagged rocks and craters. In the distance, the base loomed, a cluster of dark metal structures built into the side of a mountain. Thalrian moved to Emma's side as they advanced toward the base, his voice quiet in her mind. We must act swiftly. If Koresh realizes we are here, he will escalate the situation. He may even attempt to escape. Emma nodded. Let's hope we can catch him off guard. As they neared the entrance, Inara and her Valyrian squad moved ahead, using their advanced cloaking technology to scout the perimeter. Moments later, she returned, her expression grim. Koresh's forces are on alert. They know something is coming. We must move now. Donovan signaled to the team. Let's go. Everyone, stick to the plan. We hit them fast and hard, neutralize their defenses, and get Koresh. The group split into 2 units, one led by Donovan and Inara to secure the outer defenses, while Emma, Valerian, and Marcus joined a smaller team tasked with infiltrating the command center where Koresh was likely to be. As they moved through the shadowy corridors of the base, Emma could hear the distant sounds of battle, the crack of gunfire and the hiss of Valyrian energy weapons. They reached the central control room without much resistance, but as they entered, Emma's heart sank. Koresh was waiting for them. He stood at the far end of the room, flanked by several heavily armed Valyrian soldiers. His imposing figure seemed larger than life, his iridescent skin glowing with an almost unnatural intensity. His eyes locked onto Valerian, and a sneer twisted his lips. Valerian, Koresh's telepathic voice boomed through the room, filled with contempt. I should have known you would bring the humans to do your dirty work. You've betrayed your own kind. Valerian stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. You are the one who has betrayed us, Koresh. You would doom our people to endless war, all because you cannot see that cooperation is our only chance for survival. Koresh's eyes flicked toward Emma and the others. Cooperation? With these primitives? They will turn on us the moment we are no longer useful to them. I am doing what must be done to ensure the Valyrians do not become slaves to humanity's whims. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. We don't want war, Koresh. We want peace. But if you continue down this path, you're going to destroy everything. Your people, our people, there won't be anyone left to save. Koresh's sneer deepened. Spare me your human platitudes. Peace is a lie. Power is the only truth. And I will not bow to you or your kind. Before anyone could respond, Koresh raised his arm, and in an instant, the room erupted into chaos. Energy blasts flew across the room, and Emma dove behind a control panel as the sound of battle filled the air. Valerian's forces rushed forward to engage Koresh's guards, while Marcus and Emma scrambled for cover. Keep him alive. Donovan's voice barked over the comms. We need him alive. Emma peeked out from behind the panel, her heart racing as she saw Valerian and Koresh locked in combat. The 2 Valyrians moved with inhuman speed, their bodies glowing with energy as they exchanged blows. It was like watching gods clash, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. Valerian's voice rang out, both aloud and in Emma's mind. Koresh, stop. You are leading us to ruin. Koresh responded with a vicious blow, knocking Valerian back. No, it is you who are blind, Valerian. They will never accept us as equals. As Koresh moved to deliver another strike, Valerian dodged and countered, finally managing to land a critical blow that sent Koresh crashing to the ground. Before he could recover, Inara and her team moved in, subduing him with precision. The battle was over. Koresh lay on the ground, restrained, his eyes filled with hatred but also a flicker of something else, perhaps the realization that his fight was truly over. Valerian stood over him, breathing heavily but victorious. Emma approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. It's done, she said quietly. He's captured. Valerian looked down at Koresh, his expression one of deep sadness. You have left us with no choice, old friend. Justice will be served, but not like this. Koresh sneered one last time before his glowing eyes dimmed, his body finally succumbing to the restraints placed on him. As the team regrouped and secured the base, Emma stood with Valerian, watching the distant stars through the window of the command center. The weight of everything that had happened pressed heavily on her shoulders, but there was also a sense of relief. We did it, Marcus said, coming up beside them. We stopped him. Valerian's voice echoed softly in Emma's mind. Yes, but the path forward will still be difficult. Koresh's defeat is only the beginning. We must rebuild the trust that has been lost, between our people and yours. Emma nodded, her gaze distant. We will. It won't be easy, but today we showed that it's possible. Outside, The asteroid base lay quiet, the battle over, but the future, however uncertain, now glimmered with the promise of peace. And for the first time in weeks, Emma allowed herself to hope. Together, humans and Valurians had overcome the first great test of their alliance. The dawn of a new era had begun, and though the challenges ahead were many, they would face them side by side. Years later, Earth stood as a beacon of interspecies cooperation, the first world in a galaxy now aware of the Valurians' tragic exodus and triumphant alliance with humanity. Dr. Emma Gray, now an ambassador to the stars, looked out over a new, united world where humans and Valurians coexisted, learning from each other. In the end, the Valurian plea for refuge had not only saved their race but had elevated humanity into a new era of peace, exploration, and understanding. The stars no longer felt distant. They were home.